Good morning, boys and girls. Today we are coming to you live from the Street Food Institute, which is housed in the CNM campus. That is the Central New Mexico Community College in Albuquerque. And our story today, our storyteller today, is the executive chef, director of the Culinary Arts program here. But before we get to our storyteller, I'd like to tell you a little bit about what the story is today and why we would be in a kitchen. The name of the book is The Stone Soup, which has been around for over 70 years. It's an old French fairy tale, and it is still a very popular book with children. And it's an old fairy tale, like I said, about these soldiers that come to this little village, and they trick the village, and they're very greedy people in this village, into making them a feast because they're hungry. So the story teaches us that together we can be so much more. It is a great story for teaching the power of working together, helping each other, kindness, and sharing. The theme involves giving to others in need, which is really relevant today in the world when we help others that are in need. So it's a wonderful story. And now I'm going to tell you a little bit about our storyteller. His name is Chef Cristino Griego. He was born and raised in Las Vegas, New Mexico, where he attended school and graduated from Robertson High School in 1991 and went on to UNM, graduating in 1995. His journey then continued to Washington, D.C., where he worked for the National Council of La Raza and then the C-SPAN network. Before moving to Denver, he worked there before moving to Denver, Colorado, where he fulfilled his lifelong dream of being a chef and owning his own restaurant. He graduated from Cook Street School of Culinary Arts in Denver and had the opportunity to study in France and Italy with renowned chefs. There was an empty void in his soul and knew that he needed to get back to New Mexico, closed down the restaurant, and came back to where his roots are. And so with that, I'd like to introduce you today to Chef Cristino Griego.
Thank you for that introduction. Again, my name is Cristino Griego, the executive chef here at Street Food Institute. We're a nonprofit organization that is community-based in terms of helping other young people find their careers in the food industry. And today, after I give my little introduction here, I want to introduce our sous chef here at the Street Food Institute. He's probably the most valuable part of the team in terms of running the kitchen, making sure everything is streamlined, the scheduling, all that sort of stuff. So without Chris Romero, who is our sous chef, we probably couldn't be able to run the kitchen as fluidly as we do. And I'm excited. I was asked to read Stone Soup, actually a book that I really loved as a kid. I always found it really interesting because since I was very young, I've always loved to cook and watch my grandmothers, my parents cook, and I've always loved to do that. So I appreciate being offered this chance to be able to make you all stone soup today. Here's the cover of the book, and it is by Marcia Brown. We'll start with: 3 soldiers trudged down the road in a strange country. They were on their way home from the wars. Besides being tired, they were hungry. In fact, they hadn't eaten nothing for 2 days. How I would like a good dinner tonight, said the first. And a bed to sleep in, said the second. But all that impossible, said the third. We must march on. And they marched on. Suddenly ahead of them, they saw the lights of a village. Maybe we'll find a bite to eat there, said the first. And a loft to sleep in, said the second. No harm in asking, said the third. Now the peasants of that place feared strangers. When they heard the 3 soldiers were coming down the road, they talked amongst themselves. Here come 3 soldiers. Soldiers are always hungry, but we have little enough for ourselves. And they hurried to hide the food. They pushed sacks of barley under the hay in the lofts. They lowered buckets of milk down the wells. They spread old quilts over carrot bins. They hid their cabbages and potatoes under their beds. They hung the meat in the cellars. They hid all they had to eat. Then they waited. The soldiers stopped first at the house of Paul and Francois. Good evening to you, they said. Could you spare a bit of food for 3 hungry soldiers? We have no food ourselves for 3 days, said Paul. Francois made a sad face. It has a poor harvest. The 3 soldiers went on to the house of Albert and Louise. Could you spare a bit of food and have you some corner where we could sleep for the night? Oh no, said Albert. We gave all we could to spare to the soldiers who came before you. Our beds are full, said Louise. At Vincent and Marie's house, the answer was the same. It had been a poor harvest, and all the grain must be kept for seed. So it went through the village. Not a peasant had any food to give away. They all had good reasons. One family used the grain for feed. Another had an old sick father to care for. All had too many mouths to fill. The villagers stood in the street and sighed. They looked as hungry as they could. The 3 soldiers talked together. Then the first soldier called out, "Good people!" The peasants drew near. "We are 3 hungry soldiers in a strange land. We have asked you for food, and you have no food. Well, then we'll have to make stone soup." The peasants stared. Stone soup? That would be something to know about. First, we'll need a large iron pot, the soldiers said. The peasants brought the largest pot they could find. How else to cook enough? That's none too large, said the soldiers, but it will do. And now we need water to fill it and fire it up to heat. It took many buckets of water to fill the pot. A fire was built on the village square and the pot was set to boil. And now, if you please, 3 round, smooth stones. Those were easy enough to find. The peasants' eyes grew round as they watched the soldiers drop the stones into the pot. Any soup needs salt and pepper, said the soldiers as they began to stir. Children ran to fetch salt and pepper. Stones like these generally make for good soup. But oh, if there were carrots, it would be much better. Why, I think I have carrot or 2, said Francois, and off she ran. She came back with her apron full of carrots from the bin beneath the red quilt. A good stone soup should have cabbage, said the soldiers as they sliced carrots into the pot. But no use for asking what we don't have. I think I could find a cabbage somewhere, said Marie as she hurried home. Back she came with 3 cabbages from her cupboard under her bed. If we only had a bit of beef and a few potatoes, this soup would be good enough for a rich man's table. The peasants thought it over. They remembered their potatoes and sides of beef hanging in the cellars. They ran to fetch them. A rich man's soup, and all from few stones? It seemed like magic to the peasants. Ah, sighed the soldiers as they stirred the beef and potatoes. If we only had a little barley and a cup of milk, this soup would be fit for the king himself. Indeed, he asked for just such a soup when last he dined with us. The peasants looked at each other. The soldiers had entertained the king? Well, but no use for asking for what we do not have. The soldiers sighed. The peasants brought their barley from the lofts. They brought their milk from the wells. The soldiers stirred the barley and milk into the steaming broth while the peasants stared. At last, the soup was ready. All of you shall taste, the soldiers said. But first, a table must be set. Great tables were placed in the square. All around were lit with torches. Such a soup! How good it smelled! Truly fit for a king. But then the peasants asked themselves, would not such a soup require bread and a roast and cider? Soon the banquet spread was ready and everyone sat down to eat. Never had there been such a feast. Never had the peasants tasted such a soup, and fancy made from rocks. They ate and they drank and they ate and they drank, and after that they danced. They danced and sang far into the night. At last they were tired. The three soldiers asked, is there not a loft where we could sleep? Let their such wise and splendid gentlemen sleep in a loft? Indeed, they must have the best beds in the village. So the first soldier slept in the priest's house. The second soldier slept in the baker's house. And the third soldier slept in the mayor's house. Oh, and it's all knowing how, said the soldiers, and off they went down the road. And that is the story of Stone Soup, one of my favorites. I hope you all enjoyed. The question is, what steps did I have to take, or what we have to take in this industry to become a chef, a cook? One thing to understand is that regardless of title, we're all just cooks. We do different things. We can do everything from catering to owning restaurants, to working in restaurants, hospitality, working in hotels, on cruise ships. There's so many varied jobs that a cook can do. And you could take this profession anywhere you want. Chris can go to Italy right now and get a job in a kitchen. I could go to Spain and get a job in a kitchen. It's a very diverse and versatile career. I chose the path and was fortunate enough to choose the path where I went to culinary school. And really, I went to school more for the technicality. I was very fortunate to be able to travel a lot and be able to eat food all around the world and fall in love with food. So I took that passion and understanding and perspective of food to my culinary education. Most of the people in this industry actually start from the ground up, start as dishwashers and work their way up. Chris has been very fortunate to work in some of the best restaurants in Albuquerque and also some of the best restaurants in North Carolina. Chris didn't go to culinary school, but his technical skills and his understanding of food and his passion for food outshines maybe somebody that does go to culinary school and just doesn't have that passion. We do what we do, which is a very difficult job. We're on our feet anywhere from 12 to 16 hours a day, and it's a lot of work. But what keeps us going every day is the passion and love for what we do. Just like a musician, just like a painter, just like a singer, we're artists in our own right. We have an understanding in our minds of how foods work together. But more importantly, I think the reason we love food so much is it brings people together. If you look at the world and the chaos that's going on in it right now, if you think about having a table where we legitimately sit down and we have a beautiful meal and we share that together, I can almost guarantee that we'd be in a more peaceful place on earth. And I've been really fortunate to be able to work with so many amazing people and cook food for so many amazing people. I did a state dinner for the ambassador to the Dominican Republic. I've cooked for a little known band by the name of Aerosmith. I've cooked for mayors, governors, and you just see the appreciation in their faces when they have something nice and warm and hearty to have at the end of their day. Let's look at it, see how the soup turned out.
That looks good. It smells so good, Chris.
Thank you.
Oh boy. I'm going to get a little bit of the broth first. Very good.
The meaning of this soup really is how, as a community, and you pull your resources together, it creates something. And regardless of what that is, whether it's a pot of stew or it's helping a friend build a house, it's taking care of your neighbor, things like that is really what this story is all about.